Welcome to Real Crime Zone, where we dive into the most chilling and unexpected real-life crimes. Today's case is one that will leave you heartbroken and shocked. It's the tragic story of 21-year-old Grace Millane, a bright young traveler from the UK whose adventurous spirit led her to New Zealand after 6 weeks in South America. But what was supposed to be an exciting and new chapter of her journey took a dark and deadly turn. On November 30th, Grace arrived in Auckland, excited to explore the beautiful city. Little did she know that her decision to meet a man she'd connected with on Tinder would be her last. Just 2 days later, on December 1st, Grace was seen for the final time. Her life cut short by a person she barely knew. Who was this man, and what led him to take Grace's life in such a cruel way? Join us as we uncover the twisted details behind this horrifying crime and explore how a seemingly innocent Tinder date turned into a nightmare no one could have predicted. At 21, Grace Millane had her whole life ahead of her. After finishing her degree in advertising and marketing at the University of Lincoln, Grace decided to take a break before diving into her career. Born on December 2, 1996 in Wickford, Essex, she was the youngest of 3 children, with 2 older brothers. Her parents, David and Gillian, described her as creative, sociable, and incredibly family-oriented. She had a love for life, always lively and compassionate. In 2018, after saving up, Grace embarked on an adventure, a gap year of backpacking around the world. She was excited to experience new cultures, meet new people, and explore the beauty the world had to offer. Grace had a heart of gold. Before leaving for her trip, she even cut off her long hair and donated it to Little Princess Trust, a charity that provides wigs for children with cancer. Her journey began in South America, where she spent 6 weeks exploring different countries and making friends along the way. It was during this trip that Grace shared her travel experiences with her family and friends back home, always sending pictures and updates. On November 19, 2018, Grace arrived in New Zealand, ready for the next leg of her adventure. She spent the next 11 days exploring and soaking in the sights of Auckland, checking into a hostel on Queen Street called Base Backpackers. Grace was sharing a room with other travelers and was looking forward to her next big outing. On December 1st, Grace made plans to meet up with someone she had connected with on Tinder. Like many of us, she was excited but a little unsure about meeting someone new. After chatting for a bit, Grace and her date decided to meet at Sky City, a popular entertainment complex in Auckland with bars, restaurants, and a casino. Grace wore a black dress and white shoes and headed out into the city. The evening seemed to be going well. Grace messaged her friend back in the UK, saying that she clicked with her date. She mentioned that he worked as an oil manager and lived in a hotel. After a bit, the pair moved on to another location, the Blue Stone Room, a bar in the city. However, something odd happened during their time together. At one point, Grace left the table, and her date, for some reason, picked up her handbag and started looking through it. This unusual behavior didn't seem to alarm Grace, and the night continued. Just after 9:30 p.m., Grace and her date left the Blue Stone Room, walking arm in arm down the street. Sadly, this would be the last time Grace was seen alive. The next day, December 2nd, was Grace's 22nd birthday. Her family and friends were eager to wish her a happy birthday, but when they reached out, they were met with silence. Grace, who was always in touch with her loved ones, didn't respond to any messages. Both her phones were off, going straight to voicemail. This was extremely unusual, and her family became concerned. Grace's brother, Declan, said that she had been constantly sending updates and photos from her trip. For her to go completely silent on her birthday raised red flags immediately. On December 5th, her parents reported her missing to the Auckland police. When the police checked with the hostel where Grace was staying, they confirmed that she hadn't returned on the night of December 1st. Most of her belongings were still there. At first, there was no clear sign of foul play. Maybe the police thought she had just stayed with new friends and forgotten to check in. However, the police quickly pieced together Grace's last known movements using CCTV footage from around the city. The man Grace had been with on that fateful night was soon identified. His name was Jesse Kempson, and he was staying at the City Life Hotel in Auckland. Jesse was the last person seen with Grace, and it didn't take long for the police to consider him a person of interest. Jesse Kempson had a troubled background. Born and raised in the Wellington region, his parents separated when he was just 9. His mother moved overseas, and he was raised by his father and grandfather. Kempson's life seemed marked by instability. He had lived in Australia for a few years, working odd jobs, and had a history of run-ins with the law, including a drunk driving conviction and arrests for disorderly behavior. On December 5th, the same day Grace was reported missing, the police brought Jesse in for questioning. He didn't seem concerned at first and agreed to answer their questions. However, what he told the police didn't seem to add up. On that fateful night, Jesse told the police that nothing unusual happened. According to him, the date with Grace ended on good terms. They shared a hug, a kiss on the cheek, and made plans to meet the next day before parting ways at around 10 p.m. However, the police weren't satisfied yet. They hadn't finished checking all the CCTV footage from the City Life Hotel where Jesse was staying, and they were about to uncover more disturbing details. As investigators pieced together almost 6 terabytes of surveillance footage, the true events of that night started to take shape. Jesse had claimed they parted ways on the street, but the cameras told a different story. Grace and Jesse were seen arriving together at the motel arm in arm. They took the elevator to Jesse's floor. However, while Jesse was seen leaving the hotel the next day, Grace was not. The cameras showed Jesse walking out on the morning of what would have been Grace's birthday. CCTV footage followed Jesse as he spent the day shopping. He bought a suitcase, then headed to buy cleaning supplies. Just before noon, he took a taxi to a car rental company where he rented a red Toyota Corolla. Hours later, Jesse went on another Tinder date with a different woman. She would later report that their conversation had deeply unsettled her. Jesse talked about burying bodies and mentioned his friends in law enforcement, making her uncomfortable. She rejected his offer to ride in his car and never saw him again. Later that day, Jesse rented a rock cleaning machine. He told the staff he had spilled red wine and needed to clean it up. At around 9:30 p.m., he was caught on camera again, loading 2 suitcases onto a hotel trolley and transferring them to the rented car. The next morning, he was spotted buying a shovel. Hours later, he was seen power washing the car he had rented before returning it to the rental company. The car was then rented out by another customer. By December 5th, Grace had been reported missing, and Jesse was seen visiting various locations, discarding things in bins. That same day, police arrived at the City Life Hotel to talk to Jesse. As they approached the front desk, Jesse returned to the hotel. The moment he saw the police, he turned around quickly and walked away, keeping his head turned in the opposite direction. The officers noticed and pursued him, eventually bringing him in for questioning. At first, Jesse denied anything had happened, but police had enough reason to suspect otherwise and began searching his hotel room. By December 7th, Grace's father, David, had flown to Auckland and made an emotional plea for help in finding his daughter. The investigation was moving fast. Although police didn't name Jesse publicly, they said they had spoken to him and considered him a person of interest. With each passing hour, hope faded, and authorities expressed grave concerns for Grace's safety. On December 8th, more evidence came to light, leading to Jesse being taken into custody and questioned again. This time, his story changed dramatically. Forensic investigators who searched Jesse's hotel room found an unsettling scene. Despite his attempts to clean, Grace's blood was all over the floor. With this discovery, it didn't take police long to figure out where to search. They focused on an area near the Waitakere Reservoir off Scenic Drive. On the afternoon of December 8th, around 4 p.m., police found Grace's body. She was about 10 yards from the road, buried in a shallow grave. The news of Grace's death shook the nation. Detective Inspector Scott Beard, who had been leading the investigation, had been in close contact with the Millane family throughout the search. It was a devastating moment for the team, who had been hoping to bring Grace home safe. The grief spread beyond the investigation team. Vigils were held across New Zealand with thousands paying tribute to Grace. Even New Zealand's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, publicly apologized to Grace's family and promised the country support. Just 2 days after Grace was found, on December 10th, Jesse was formally charged with her murder. He appeared in court and was granted interim name suppression to ensure a fair trial, which is why much of the early interview footage remained blurred out. A pathologist who conducted Grace's autopsy confirmed she had been strangled. Bruises on her arms and chest showed signs of being pinned down. It would have taken between 4 to 5 minutes of pressure to her neck to cause her death. In the early hours of that same morning after Grace had died, Jesse didn't panic as he would later claim. Instead, he calmly used his phone to search for disturbing things like the hottest fire, flesh-eating birds, and the location where he would later bury Grace. Afterward, he browsed for pornography site and even took intimate photos of Grace's dead body. Grace's funeral took place in Essex, England, just over a month after her body was found. Hundreds gathered at Brentwood Cathedral to say their goodbyes. Detective Inspector Scott Beard even flew to the UK to support the Millane family and pay his respects. But during all this time, Jesse maintained his innocence. 6 days after Grace's funeral, he appeared in the High Court and pled not guilty. His trial began in November the following year and lasted 3 weeks. Throughout much of it, Jesse sat emotionless, occasionally glancing down at the court papers or holding his head in his hands. Jesse's defense argued that Grace's death had been an accident, a tragic result of consensual rough sex that had gone terribly wrong. They claimed Jesse panicked after realizing what had happened and tried to cover up the incident. But the prosecution had mountains of evidence against him. They argued that Jesse's actions were deliberate and intentional. They accused him of crafting a web of lies, calmly covering his tracks and showing no real remorse for his actions. Grace Millane's murder trial sparked outrage. People were upset by how Grace's life and death were portrayed, feeling her killer shifted blame onto her instead of taking responsibility. Jesse Kempson, Grace's murderer, was called a pathetic fantasist by his family, who said he often lied, even about pointless things. After his conviction for her murder, 2 more trials followed. In October 2020, an ex-partner of Jesse came forward with chilling details of his abuse. She revealed he had choked her, threatened her with knives, and forced her into sex acts, all while draining her bank account. He was found guilty of 8 charges and sentenced to 7.5 years in prison. In November 2020, another woman testified against Jesse. She had been raped by him 8 months before Grace's murder. Jesse threatened to kill her and her family if she didn't comply. He was convicted again and received another 3.5 years in jail. These sentences were to be served alongside his life sentence for Grace's murder. In court after his conviction, Jesse lashed out angrily, shouting that there was no reason to convict him. Adding to the heartbreak, in November 2020, Grace's father, David, passed away after battling cancer. Following Grace's death, her mother and cousin started a charity called Love Grace. This charity helps women affected by domestic violence by donating handbags filled with essentials. By 2023, they had given out over 15,000 bags across the UK and internationally. Their efforts were recognized in 2024 when both women were awarded Officer of the British Empire honors for their charitable work and efforts in combating violence against women. In the end, this tragic case serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of justice and the ongoing fight against violence towards women. Grace's legacy lives on through the Love Grace charity, helping countless women in need. What do you think about this tragic case of a young life lost too soon? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this episode. If you found this story compelling, please like, share, and subscribe to stay updated with our next in-depth investigations on Real Crime Zone. See you in our next video.